Thank you, Mr. Speaker, on this excellent amendment, and I appreciate my colleague bringing it forward. We're going to debate the bill of chief in a moment, but I was reflecting on a debate that was a little over a year ago. Our former colleague, Assemblyman Ortiz, stood in this chamber and in response to a question that a freshman legislator had, he said, I pressed him on the date. I said, how did we arrive to April 30th, 2021, which to anyone in this body sort of seemed inconceivable at the time, that we would be dealing with this over a year later. So in my mind, I'm not being super savvy, but knowing something about the processes around here, I said, well, it happens to be 30 days after the budget. I can see what the governor is probably up to. And I pressed my colleague to try and get him to say, well, that was the date that the governor picked. He wouldn't do it, but he did say, and I wish he was back here today, but the voters decided to go a different way. He said, I think the legislature, they're in session. So we will put a sunset, April 30th, 2021. And if, if for any other reason we feel that there's any reason to come back, we'll come back, we'll reconvene, and we'll change that date. At the time, the sponsor of the bill stood here in this chamber and gave us the impression, yeah, April 30th, 2021. That's probably too long. I got it. But that's what the governor asked for. We'll see how this thing goes. And if it's not going well, we'll reconvene at any time. And we'll do the full repeal. We'll take this back. Because we need this $40 million in order for Department of Health to pay for emergency equipment and PPE that is critical. The governor's a savvy guy. He put them both in the same bill. He knew how to get the votes in this House. Nobody wanted to stop progress on what was a pending emergency. So the legislature handed it over, and the sponsor of the bill in chief at the time said, yeah, but don't worry. At some point, if the governor is getting out of control, we reconvened a number of times. We're now 2 months into session here. What does the bill in chief look like? What are reasons? I mean, to Western New Yorkers, it's that chicken wings aren't a substantial meal. That's what it looks like when you reconvene and change your mind and take power back from the governor. It looks like on Tuesday, it's okay to have 10 people in your home, but on Wednesday, you can have 25. Thank you very much, oh benevolent leader. We appreciate you for allowing me to now have 25 people in my home if I deem it to be safe. That would be a reason to reconvene, support an amendment like this. That's the full repeal of those executive emergency powers. I bet if we had the crystal ball, if we could debate the things that the governor was about to do that we didn't know about, he wouldn't have gotten a single vote in this chamber. At least I hope not. Who can look at the executive orders that came down over the last year and defend them on this floor? I certainly couldn't. I'd invite the governor to walk in here and defend them. Boy, that'd be fun to try and get the bill done again this time, wouldn't it? So let's not make the mistake in the future. That's what this amendment's saying. It's saying, hey, instead of the bill in chief that we're about to extend his emergency powers in perpetuity, something that Assemblyman Ortiz couldn't even defend April 30, 2021. But could you imagine if he was trying to get the bill done then and said, in perpetuity, this is how we're going to run New York State from now on. The governor's just going to do it. What do we do here? Well, I don't know. We got microphones and desks. So far, we pretend. We pretend like we're a co-equal branch of government. We put a title up on a bill that says, termination of executive powers by the legislature. That's a pretend title. We're pretending. This doesn't do anything to terminate executive powers. It actually extends them. So what does it look like when you vote against this excellent amendment that's been brought forward? Well, for me, it looks like O'Brien's Restaurant in Clayton, New York, calls me up and says, hey, I read the headline and it said termination of executive powers by the legislature. So thank you. Thank you for finally doing something, because now I don't have to lose the business that I've fought to build for 40 years and I've held on to throughout this thing, waiting. Maybe I can get through April 30th so that the governor's thumb is finally lifted off of my business and I can thrive once again, right? That'll be the phone call. What do I tell them? What are you going to tell your constituents when they call? It looks like the Thousand Islands Fitness Center, which is a walk-in 20-hour facility. It's a gym, right? Another business owner in my district in Alexandria Bay that has just been hanging on. Got together with a bunch of other gyms, sued the governor. Before that suit came forward, he relented and allowed them to open for a longer period of time with certain restrictions, right? What does it look like for him when he calls and he says, oh, am I 24 hours now? What does it look like for me? Think about that when you vote on this amendment, because you have the opportunity right now to be a check on the executive. I couldn't help, it was about a week ago, there was a landlord in Albany, and I don't know why this didn't make national headlines, but I'll talk about it today because I think it's worthy. There was a landlord in Albany that kidnapped his tenants, zip-tied them, drove them 30 miles to a cemetery, and dumped them off. It made local media. This is the third order of effect of a government that is getting way too involved in people's day-to-day lives. This landlord was at such their wits' end, and I'm not excusing that behavior by any means, but I know the people in this chamber have received enough calls from landlords to know exactly where that mentality came from. And if we don't vote on this amendment, we're going to continue that mentality, and you're going to continue to receive those phone calls. If you vote against this amendment, you are saying that these ridiculous rules that we've been living under should continue, and not continue to April 30, 2021, which was for a long time when businesses were calling me in August and September and October, was my answer for the worst case scenario. You've extended that worst case scenario answer for me in perpetuity. What do I tell somebody now? Until the governor decides that he doesn't want to have a deadline anymore? Forever? Good luck. I'm sorry that I begged you so many times to stay in New York and hang on, and I believe in you, and I'm fighting for you. I guess I was wrong. It is time to pack it up and leave. What do I tell them? What are you going to tell them? If you vote against this amendment, what are you going to tell those business owners? I don't know. I certainly couldn't do it. That's why I'm going to support this amendment. It's a great one, and it's time to take back the power from the executive. So I vote for repealing the governor's extraordinary emergency powers. This is now a manageable health crisis that we're on our way out from. It's not a pending doom pandemic like was painted on the floor a year ago. This amendment is the full repeal of extraordinary emergency powers. Voting for it is a vote for freedom. Voting for it is a belief that there should be balance and checks and balances in our government. Voting for it is voting for our republic and the representative democracy that we all swore an oath to uphold. And voting for it is a vote against a crown and against the rule of a monarch in this state. Mr. Speaker, I support this amendment.